Is it possible that your lack of focus is holding you back? One of my favorite quotes by speaker and author Robin Sharma, he says, and I'm paraphrasing, you can do two things, right? You can be distracted or you can do incredible things, but you can't do both. And this was sort of a light bulb moment for me, right? My business is very much immersed in the digital space. It's a lot of media, a lot of creation. That means it's very easy for me to dive down the YouTube, rat holes and the Instagram, TikToks. It means there's emails and DMs and texts and the same thing a lot of us deal with. And what happens is that corrodes our ability to focus on what matters. So I spent some time kind of researching and aggregating 5 things that we can all do to help keep these distractions away where they should be and focus on what matters. So here are 5 things to help you focus. Number 1, and I'm sure this is no surprise, is digital discipline, right? Which is basically creating friction or barriers between ourselves and all that technology that so easily distracts and keeps us from what we're doing. There's a really interesting study from Florida State University that says just hearing a notification bell on your phone is as distracting as picking it up and talking. It's as distracting as, picking up the phone and replying to a DM, right? Because all 3 of them take your attention away from what you're doing, from your focus, and that's what we need to protect. We need to put ourselves in control and place friction between us and those distractions. I can say firsthand, one of the most important things I've done is silence push notifications or stop push notifications from Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all that stuff. 1, because who cares if someone's following you or commenting or whatever it is. And 2, because it puts you in the driver's seat, right? If randomly at 3:17 p.m. an arbitrary bell stops you from what you're doing and forces you to pivot, you are not in control. You're just not, right? And focus is about being in control. So instead, why not say at 4 p.m., I'll go into TikTok or I'll go into Instagram. That's my time to send a meme back to my buddy or do your posts or your stories or reply to comments or whatever it is. But again, it puts you back into control. And there are other tools for that as well that I think are pretty valuable. There are apps like Forest that are designed to prevent you from using your phone at all, right? So you plant a digital tree, and if you go into your phone and open an app, the tree dies, right? So it's gamifying the experience, but it's helpful. Another concept is mindful browsing, which is super simple, but it asks anytime you open an app or enter a URL, you have to ask yourself, what am I doing this for? Which when you start doing that, you realize how many things you click and go to just out of habit without even thinking about it. So that's the name of the game, creating friction between you and the distraction and putting yourself in control of what you're focusing on. Number 2 is creating a mindful environment. And I can say anecdotally that this is incredibly impactful. When my studio, for example, is clean, it's orderly, when I like the lighting, when I like how it's set up and how it's decorated, it allows me to immerse myself into it and be more creative. I find it easier to get into a flow state. And that's just, from years and years of doing this, but there are also studies that back this up. There's one from UCLA that draws a direct line from one's environment to their mood. It states that a cluttered space it overloads the senses. It makes the mind or the brain work harder to get things done. You'd notice pretty quickly if you made that extra effort to make your work environment conducive to you personally and how you best perform. That little effort goes a long way. And another thing that closely ties into this is creating zones in your house or wherever you work specifically to be productive. Because I work from home, I used to be sort of nonchalant about where I worked. Bring my laptop in bed, just work wherever. But I've found that when I have a specific place, it allows me to, it brings clarity to what I'm doing and allows me to be very specific, very precise, and more efficient with my workflow and my processes. Number 3 is create a structured work technique. And there are a few things here that I think warrant diving into. The first is prioritizing. And I know this seems obvious, but here's my thing with the obvious stuff, right? First, we always tend to miss those obvious things. And 2, when we do miss the obvious things, the cost is expensive, right? We pay a hefty price for missing the obvious stuff. So it's important that we identify what matters and we're doing the things, the 20% that brings us 80% of the results. Look, we're talking a lot about focus and working efficiently and effectively. Well, that only matters if we're working on the right things. So keep that in mind. Next, as Cal Newport says in his book, Deep Work, once you've identified those meaningful things that are going to provide the value, find a place to immerse yourself in them fully. Again, where there's no distractions, there's no bells, there's no notifications, it's you and that work. Because the most important things you can do cannot be done outside of those spaces. It's very hard in the fast-paced nature of life. It's like you have to seclude yourself, really tuck yourself away and get done what you have to do. And third is when you're in that spot, how do you execute? There's a cool idea that I came across called the Pomodoro technique that is, working hard and intensely for short periods of time with a quick break. So for example, you're a writer and, you have to do, however many chapters. You look at that in totality, that's stressful, that's difficult. It's not conducive to effective writing. But if you break it down into 25 minutes of deep, intensive work with a 5-minute break, that changes the dynamic. So much of being effective is just breaking big things down into little things, and that's a structure or a technique that allows you to do that. So make sure you create a structured work technique for yourself. Number 4 is well-being in mindfulness, which is always interesting to me because it seems on the surface like counterintuitive, right? We're talking about being effective with our work, being able to focus, be efficient, productive. But in reality, so much of our success there depends on shutting down elsewhere, completely removing ourselves from the process and allowing our minds to decompress. Sure, we want to crush it when we're here, right? And when we've set ourselves up to succeed with whatever it is we're doing. But if our minds and our bodies aren't in position to do that, then we haven't really put ourselves in a position to succeed. So it is being outside, it's exercise, it's taking walks, it's meditation, it's thinking, it's breathing. It's all these things that seem trivial, but at the end of the day, create that calmness and bring about that clarity that's necessary to succeed in whatever we're doing. And lastly, avoid multitasking, right? There's this myth that, if you're doing multiple things at once, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone or 3. But in reality, what you're doing is just every single task worse than you would if you were able to concentrate and give it, your sole focus and attention, right? There's a Stanford study that showed people who multitask were actually worse at organizing their thoughts and filtering out bad ideas. It just creates more variables and chaos, and the whole point of this conversation and focus in totality is to eliminate that. It's to simplify, identify what matters, and work effectively on that. So I would highly advocate, and so would some of the research that I've come across, avoiding multitasking and staying linear and focused on what you're doing. And there you have it, 5 ways to mitigate distraction and better focus on the things that matter. I hope some or all of these will better assist you in whatever it is you're doing to focus and bring clarity to your pursuit. If so, make sure you like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking. And per usual, look forward to catching up with you next week.